The views and opinions expressed by past, present, and future guests of Xendependently Minded have not been expressed by me, and they may not even be shared by me. The views and opinions that I express are, of course, satirical. If you're confused, then try this thought experiment to help you understand. If you like what I said, or say, and you agree, then you can tell yourself that it is my real opinion, and it's not satirical. If you don't agree with what I say, and you're disgusted and repulsed by it, then obviously I'm just being satirical. Obviously, these aren't my real opinions, because this is clearly a character, and nobody would actually have these opinions, would they? Anyway, enjoy the episode. How's it going, theys and thems? It's your boy, Xendependently Minded, back at it with another episode of Xendependently Minded. Ignore my friend over here, over my right shoulder. He's a little crazy, gets a little wild. It annoys me because he can be a little bit of a hypocrite. He'll do stuff like this, have famous pictures like this, and then he'll pearl clutch when it comes to old ladies who decided, I don't think I want to get this experimental, rushed out vaccine that's supposed to help fight an unknown virus from an unspecified origin. So I'm going to invoke military powers, governmental powers that have never been activated in my country's history. That way, I can send some guy who's underpaid to ride a horse that'll end up trampling an old lady because she doesn't want to get this specific vaccination. That's my friend. He's pretty crazy. When he starts to drink, he puts on the blackface. So ignore him. Focus on me. Let's focus on the task at hand. Before we get into the episode, I want to share some sad news. You guys have probably already heard. It's been pretty hard for me to deal with. I've been trying to stay positive. I've been thinking about the bright side, thinking, I try to be an optimist. I try to think, how can I spin this in a glass half full kind of way rather than focusing on the negative? But, this is a current events podcast, so I don't just break the good news, I gotta break the bad news too. And this is something that, lots of people are struggling with. Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, has announced that he will be resigning as soon as the Liberal Party that he is a part of finds and elects their new leader. So Canadians are not completely home free, but in the meantime, he will be resigning. There's supposedly, according to him, there's going to be a robust, new election where they choose their new leader. They make sure the best person, someone that's can't be as bad as him, will take his place, right? This is an interesting thing. Before I show you this good collection I've made for you. This could be a good thing. This could be a bad thing. At the end of the day, Justin Trudeau is not resigning because he thinks he's not fit to serve. He's resigning because he was forced out by his party. It's the same thing with Joe Biden. Canadians, the Canadian Liberal Party, they know that if they do not remove this guy from office, they may never get elected again, or not for the next few decades, because of how horribly he's been in office since November 2015. Almost 9 years has been. It's been over 9 years, almost over 9 years. And they just don't want to lose their grip on the Canadian population. So they're forcing him out, and they're going to pick somebody who probably was lockstep with everything that he pushed and he passed and he advocated for during his time as Prime Minister. So before we get into talking about the other bits of news that I have, I've collected a beautiful compilation of lowlights for some of my favorite moments during my favorite Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, his tenure as Prime Minister. So this isn't an in memoriam. Don't be sad that he's gone. Be happy that we had him. Here is a Justin Trudeau lowlights compilation.
Over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
After discussing with Cabinet and caucus, after consultation with premiers from all provinces and territories, after speaking with opposition leaders, the federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his French counterpart have been caught on camera allegedly gossiping about President Donald Trump at a reception at Buckingham Palace. Now, in a huddle alongside Princess Anne and Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron were caught discussing a 40-minute press conference. President Trump was not mentioned by name, but he had held a lengthy press conference with Mr. Macron earlier that day. The leaders are in London for NATO meetings.
Unfortunately, in Canada, our volunteering as a charitable religious organization is extremely difficult. Extremely. That's why, in actuality, we cannot do free volunteering to help our neighbors in need as we truly desire. So that's why we came here today to ask you to also look into the policies that religious charitable organizations have in our legislation so that it can also be changed, because maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
So gross and disgusting that this Prime Minister keeps using the pandemic as an excuse for his corruption.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer pulling no punches as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces question period, the first since the We Charity scandal broke. The Prime Minister offering no new answers, apologizing yet again for his failure to recuse himself from the vote, but opposition members wanted to hear more than sorry.
That's right, Mr. Speaker. Nothing to see here. Just move on. Don't ask any of the tough questions. Tough questions about the relationship with an organization that paid members of his family cash, that took administration fees for running sole source government contracts after breaking their bank covenants and having members of their board resign.
So like I said before, don't be sad that he's gone, or he will be gone soon. Be happy that we had him. And nobody said it better, honestly. Forget Queen. Forget. I'm blanking on his name. The lead singer of Queen. Forget him. Nobody said it better. Nobody sang it better than Justin Trudeau. And he described his tenure as Prime Minister of Canada very succinctly when he was doing his cover of Bohemian Rhapsody. Little high, little low. But if you ask most Canadians, that aren't buddies with Trudeau, that aren't billionaires, that don't reap profits from the earth and from off the backs of hardworking Canadians, while simultaneously pushing to invoke the Emergencies Act so you could beat up people who didn't want to get vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine, if you could even call it that at this point, with all of the information that's coming out that us conspiracy theorists got demonetized or copyright struck, or stupid little information banners on our podcast pages and our YouTube channels. If you ask Canadians, normal, hardworking Canadians, they'll ask, what highs? What high? The only high that I felt was when I had to take painkillers because of how painful it was to deal with this guy as my prime minister. That's the only time I felt high, any little bits of high. There were so many other moments that I wanted to capture. It just was impossible for some reason to find clips of him saying things like she-cession and she-covery when referring to the recession that all Canadians felt during the COVID pandemic. He tried to turn it into a thing where he said, well, women are suffering harder than men. Women are suffering harder than men. It's more expensive. The pandemic is more expensive for women than it is working women, which he's never met one or talked to one in his entire life, maybe only through Zoom. Justin Trudeau had so many moments that I wanted to capture. It's just, coincidentally, it was so crazy. I looked on the internet and it seemed that a lot of them had been scrubbed, or it was like an independent channel podcast that was smaller than mine. I didn't want to take their clips and share it. Because I am going to link all the sources for these videos and these images. Let's get this freak off the screen for now. I'm gonna bring up something even better for you guys in a second. Let me real quickly change this window over, because we're gonna take a dump on my home country too, because they're not perfect. They don't have perfect leaders all the time. Before I get distracted, you shouldn't blame the citizens. There's this thing, I'll get into it a little bit later. I got to stay on track. There were a lot more clips I wanted to show, a lot more infographics I wanted to show. It just was becoming too difficult to track it down without giving... I truly did not want to give 1 cent from a click from opening a Wall Street Journal article to research this or to screen cap it. So truly, I refused to click on a Washington Post link or New York Times link just so I could get an image to dump on Trudeau for. But a little bit of context for the things in the clips, which I just lazily threw together. I'm sure it's not the greatest lowlights compilation you could find, but a man's got to do what a man's got to do. You know what I'm saying? When Trudeau took office in November of 2015, the average cost of a Canadian home was 446,000 Canadian dollars. And as of today, I believe it's around $717,000, or it was in December of 2024. Not sure if there are any numbers yet with January, because we're not even halfway through this month, but just a little snapshot on how truly and remarkably terrible it was for regular Canadians. The average cost of a house, it was already pretty bad before. It's unattainable for normal, hardworking Canadians, those that Justin Trudeau is not friends with. The only people that are going to miss Trudeau at this point, even the people who were super woke, like that lady in the clip where she lets him interrupt her and say people kind and say we can all learn from each other. Even that lady is probably, well, she won't say it openly, but she didn't vote for Trudeau when he was up for re-election probably. She probably is happy that he's gone. You can only fake support over woke issues so long, to the point where you're like, I can't even afford rent. I have to have 6 roommates to be able to afford a home where I share a bathroom with some guy that's disgusting, some smelly stranger. The only way I can afford to live here, where I've grown up for generations, where my parents raised me, is if I rent. And renting sucks. Renting is for bozos like me. The only people who are Trudeau's friends at this point are corporate global entities, because they're his buddies. He constantly clutches his pearls when it comes to talking and criticizing people like Putin and other Western, more European countries that, in the beginning, like Macron, Emmanuel Macron, is one of the worst leaders in the Western world right now. I truly believe that. But I did give him credit in the beginning of this leg of the Russia-Ukraine war. He was one of the only Western leaders who was actually consistently communicating with Putin directly. And he met with him, actually, I think, or at least he had a very in-depth, detailed conversation with him where he said, hey, let's end this, let's end this now. There's already, one drop of blood was spilled is already too much, so let's work on this. And then the rest of the European Union sanctioned him. They pretty much started spying on him. They shamed him into now just parroting every single other Western leader besides Trump's rhetoric on this leg of the war. But Trudeau is, for all the pearl-clutching that he does when talking about Putin, he's very similar to Putin. His circle is a group of oligarchs. His circle are a bunch of uber-wealthy people who we still don't know how they got most of their money. He may not be responsible for as many debts as Putin. He may not have allegedly poisoned political opponents, but he's only a couple degrees of separation away from being the Putin of the West. He is, I hate to be dramatic, but Justin Trudeau was, without a doubt, one of the biggest disasters for the great country of Canada. And I'm sad to see him go. It was very entertaining. No offense to my Canadian viewers, which, to be honest, I don't have that many. Anyway, and also the blackface picture. It's like, I don't care if you wear blackface. I don't think that's a real thing. It's just, if you're going to pearl clutch about certain things, if you're going to get upset, if you're more outraged when people say mankind instead of people kind, and you claim to be a force for good, and you're fighting the good fight, but then you're also going ham. He probably was under the influence of something that wasn't legal. That is my expert opinion. So blackface, who cares? It's actually kind of funny. But I just wanted to highlight the hypocrisy. So, first bit of news I wanted to talk about, post lowlights compilation, is the bit of news, Mark Zuckerberg, disclaimer, I haven't listened to his latest appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, but Mark Zuckerberg, totally not a reptile, totally not a humanoid hybrid cyborg. He's announced that the fact-checking and censorship era of Meta, or the parent company that owns Facebook and Instagram and Threads, who nobody uses except AI and a bunch of bots and NPCs. So he has announced that the era of Facebook, Instagram, Threads, all Meta companies' censorship and fact-checking is gone. It's over. All Zuckerberg is doing is licking his finger, putting it up in the air, so he can find the direction the wind is blowing. So he can hop on his weird lizard Green Goblin glider and go that direction. He would have kept up with the censorship of election-changing stories and impeachable offenses that certain leaders and officials and politicians from, not always from the same side of the aisle, but oftentimes, most of the time, at least for the past 12 of 16 years in presidential years in the United States, they mostly come from one side. Not always, but most of the time. He would have kept this up. He would have kept censoring these stories had the Democrats kept winning. Let's be completely honest. He's doing this only to avoid further lawsuits, because right now he's being sued alongside Biden and a few others for the suppression of certain COVID-19 viewpoints, by the way, the correct ones from during the pandemic. And he's also being sued by RFK Jr. for attacking his right to free speech. And he's going to, Facebook, Meta, they're going to lose these lawsuits. It's going to result in hefty fines. And Mark Zuckerberg half admitted the truth the first time he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He broke the news, which was not news to those of us who dared to do our own research, which is like worse than saying the N-word, I think. That's the way they treated it during the pandemic, at least. He told Joe Rogan that leading up to the 2020 election, the FBI contacted him directly, contacted Facebook directly, Meta directly, and said, hey, there's this fake Russian disinformation story referring to the Hunter Biden laptop. This is fake. Suppress it. Basically, in the same breath, they mentioned this unique status that Facebook gets, which provides them a big tax relief, a big, it saves them millions, if not billions of dollars. And they basically mentioned it in the same breath, and without saying it explicitly said, if you don't suppress the story, you're going to lose this status. You're going to lose this special tech social media status. I wish I'm a bad podcaster. I should have had this pulled up instead of the picture of Justin Trudeau in blackface. But he admitted that they contacted Meta directly, ordering him to censor the story. He didn't mention the money part, but everyone else kind of did some digging and figured out, oh, this is the reason why he did it. So it's all money. It always is. Corporations exist for one reason and one reason only, to make money, period. It doesn't matter if you have a corporation that has, I have a better reputation for treating employees, better health insurance packages, better this, better that, better treatment. At the end of the day, they are just there to make money. Some are better than others. Some treat their employees better than others. But at the end of the day, you start a business to make money. People can say, I started a business to help people. Well, you can volunteer. You can help people for free. So it's nice. I'm not denying that there aren't good businesses out there. Absolutely, there are tons and tons and tons. But don't get it twisted. Mark Zuckerberg is not all of a sudden a free speech warrior. He's not all of a sudden, a crusader for the dwindling freedoms that we have in the United States. He's a fake phony. He's a fake phony. He has no morals. Here's the thing about morals. People think that it's an interchangeable status. Like, if I do the right thing, I'm moral. If I do the wrong thing, I'm immoral. Morality is not a changing status. If you have morals, it means nothing can make you break them. Nothing can make you drop them. Mark Zuckerberg does not have morals. Like I said, he goes wherever the wind blows, when he smells that rank smell of cash, that rank smell of US dollars, when you flap it in front of you and you can smell cash. Well, I've never had that much cash to be able to do something like that, but if you smell a dollar bill, that rank smell that's like, it's not great, but there's something about it. When he smells that, he goes towards that direction. Don't get it twisted. He is just as genuine as Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur, everybody's favorite bowling ball of a man, host of the Young Turks, a show that nobody watches, hence why Cenk Uygur is pretending. He's making a disingenuous attempt to reframe himself as a populist. Cenk Uygur, he's pretending to get along with Trump supporters after still calling Trump, a criminal, still calling him a dictator, still calling him a scumbag. He's insulted and he's cheered for unfortunate things to happen to Trump supporters. But now that Trump has been reelected, Cenk all of a sudden is pretending to be a populist, though he's had millions of dollars of donations from the Democratic Party. He pretended leading up to the election that he was a populist because he could tell, again, he licked his finger, put it up in the air, and he could feel which direction the wind was blowing. And the Young Turks rose in popularity during the Bush era. They pride themselves at the Young Turks of being one of probably the oldest independent media news show in the world. They rose to popularity because they were actually populists. They were anti-war. They hated the George W. Bush and the George Bush Sr. administration and everything. They hated. They were sick of just endless wars, endless, meaningless wars. Meaningless to normal people, meaningless to those who lost their lives, meaningless to those who lost loved ones, but not meaningless to the those who own defense contracting stock. Interesting. That's how they rose to popularity. And then they started to die around the Bernie Sanders era because they loved Bernie. After Bernie, they fell in line. Well, I'd rather keep electing the same people that I built my channel fighting against because orange man bad. Vote blue no matter who. And their viewership dwindled. It's dwindling still. And that is the only reason why Cenk Uygur is pretending he's making a lazy attempt at rebranding. And I don't mean it's not working. Oh, it is. There's a lot of people who are saying, oh, Cenk Uygur finally realized the error in his ways. No, he didn't. He realized my wallet has less money in it. My bank account has less money in it. There are a couple less zeros in it than when I was more honest. There actually, let me rephrase. There are more zeros in his bank account. But he probably lies awake at night feeling guilty for betraying the people that helped him rise to such an important independent media voice and now just being a fart in the wind. The next bit of news I wanted to talk about, this image behind me doesn't actually have anything to do with this bit of news, but it's a little bit related. There's been a bit of a misinformation, a little bit of a misunderstanding with a bill recently where you might have seen this graphic that said, look, the United States, we bow down to Israel. We don't even have our own, all of our politicians serve the United States. There's a bill that Congress just passed that gives free health care to members of the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Forces, the military of the country of Israel. And I just wanted to real quickly, I'm going to post this in a link in the description. You can check out this bill that slightly true meme is referring to. This is HR 8445. So this bill has actually not been voted on. It was introduced in May 17th, 2024 by a Republican. Let's see, I don't even want to know how to pronounce his last name. His first name's Guy, Republican from Pennsylvania. Hasn't been voted on, but the fact that it was introduced should get you thinking. But like I said, it hasn't been voted on. Doesn't mean it's not going to. But if you look at this highlighted portion here, the kind of, I forget the technical term, but the kind of summary of what this bill's intention is it says to amend Title 38, United States Code in the Service Member Civil Relief Act to provide for the eligibility of United States citizens who serve in the Israeli Defense Forces for certain protections relating to such service. So, obviously that's vague. It probably details it down below, hence why I am linking this in the description so you guys can read it. Like I said, this has not been voted on. Doesn't mean it won't be. Doesn't mean they'll wait until the next alien or Chinese drone incident to quietly get this passed through, and there will only be 2 or 3 members of Congress that have integrity. One of them you can guarantee will be Thomas Massie, and I don't even know who the others will be. Unfortunately, the only other Congress member that I trust is Rand Paul, and Rand Paul, he voted in favor of keeping Mike Johnson as the Speaker of the House. So that's an unfortunate thing, but at the end of the day, I trust Rand Paul more than I would trust a Republican that happens to vote directly with me. Because if I sense that they're being phony, they don't actually mean what they say, then I'm going to trust the guy that I disagree with 50% of the time if I can sense that he's been consistent his entire time. If someone is flip-flopping, yes, it could mean that they change their mind, but if you're in Congress, you shouldn't be changing your mind that often. Unless you've really been exposed to something like, I never believed in Bigfoot, I'm going to vote against this Bigfoot investigation bill until one day you're camping with your family and then Bigfoot comes and steals your child. Yeah, I'll understand if you change your mind on Bigfoot, but most of the time, these congressmen and women are voting to reflect they're passing bills, they're doing pretty much what they were elected for, and that's their job. So when you have scumbags like Liz Cheney, who people always talk about like she's some hero, they always talk about her like she's some popular queen. The second she decided to go against her constituents, guess what? When she was up for re-election, she lost by 37 points. It was a murder. It was a political murder. Political career suicide. But she's going to be fine because she is the son of modern day, don't know who to compare him to, but you guys know Dick Cheney. Everybody's favorite warmonger, everybody's favorite architect of meaningless wars, everybody's favorite millionaire military-industrial complex, reptile, lizard, psycho, scumbag, pig. So she's going to be fine. She's got a lot of money in the bank. Daddy writes her a lot of checks for Christmas. Daddy writes a lot of checks for her campaign that she ends up losing by 37 points after running. But the bit of news I actually wanted to talk about was the United States House actually passed, the House of Representatives actually passed a bill to protect Benjamin Netanyahu, the current president, prime minister, whatever. The United States calls them presidents. The rest of the world, all these losers, these countries that aren't free like us, they call them prime ministers. They also have presidents. The supreme leader, the guy that has the power in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, this bill will protect him from the International Criminal Court. So, just to recap everything real quick. New year, but not new country. We, as Americans, still do not have affordable health care. Still do not have affordable homes. Still do not have roads that don't have potholes, that are almost nearly undrivable if you care about the shape of your car, if you don't want to have to get tires every week. Still, the biggest cities in America are dramatically worse off than equivalent-sized cities across the world. The families affected by the Southern California fires, which my thoughts and prayers go out to all of them, they'll probably receive pennies in support. But fear not, the leader of a foreign country, yes, they're our greatest ally. They're our greatest ally. They might have known about 9/11, didn't tell us, but they're our greatest ally, Israel. And that's a joke. That's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. That totally has no truth to it. It's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that I read once on Twitter, so it has to be true. But Israel's our greatest ally, so we must protect them. We must pass bills in the United States of America to protect the leaders of other countries. Rather than question why the International Criminal Court wants to arrest him, why they've put out multiple warrants for his arrest, rather than look into that and possibly maybe reconsider whether or not he, as the leader of Israel, is our greatest ally, maybe I don't know, maybe Germany's our greatest ally, maybe Spain's our greatest ally, maybe Italy and Giorgia Meloni are our greatest ally. Maybe Benjamin Netanyahu's not our greatest ally. But fret not. Forget your health care. Netanyahu needs it more. Netanyahu needs the United States more than citizens of the United States. Last thing I wanted to close on, somber bit of news, what's going on in Southern California. The fires, it's a pretty common occurrence in California. It has been for the past few decades. My heart goes out to all of those who have been affected. I grew up in Southern California. I lived in San Diego 2 separate times. I was born in Northern California. I have a lot of family and friends who live in Southern California. So it is heartbreaking to see and hear of families who lose loved ones and or lose their homes. Because losing a home is not just losing a bit of property that you bought and you pay for, you have a mortgage or you rent from. It's also the destruction of memories. And to me, and I hate to be a hippy-dippy, but the memories are more important. When an elderly person is in hospice care, in the home they grew up in, the home they raised their kids in, the home that maybe their grandkids grew up in, they're not thinking about how much did I drop on this house, how much did it cost to replace the roof after that storm, after the tree fell on it. They're thinking about the memories that they made and the meaning of the word home. So what I hope happens, what I hope comes from this, is that the leaders, and this might be a dumb hippie, childlike naivete way of thinking, but I hope that at the very least, the leaders of California can realize, hey, we might have thought we were doing it for the earth. We thought we were being eco-friendly before. But let's talk to not just the scientists that we end up funding grants for research or end up paying. Let's talk to people from Georgia. Let's talk to people who live in similarly dry places that are not experiencing these types of fires. And let's see what they're doing differently. I can tell you one thing specifically is control burns. So when you have a state that's as dry and that receives low amounts of rainfall, you're going to build up dry brush. You're going to build up, there's going to be trees that die. There's going to be grass that dries out, leaving it to be more prone to fires. While fires happen in Washington State, they're not as deadly and they're not as destructive as fires in California. That's because Washington experiences more rainfall and they have better environmental regulation, aka control burns, things like this. I know a friend who is from the Southern California area. He works really surveying wildlife populations, doing things like this, but he also has studied the effects and actually performed control burns in places across the United States. I've seen him in Wyoming, I've seen him in Yellowstone, I've seen him in Georgia. So I'm not just speaking out of my cheeks. I have a degree in English. I don't have a degree in environmental protection. I don't have a degree in, what would this be, geology, forest protection? I don't know. Park ranger school. This is coming straight from somebody who works in this industry. So I hope that California can learn from this. Do I think that it's going to happen? I really don't want to say. But one thing I do want to say is no. Contrary to retards like Cat Turd and End Wokeness, and the same people who are crying so hard when leftists were doing the same thing, it's crazy how quickly grifters like Cat Turd and Cernovich and all these dumbasses who, I know I keep bringing them up, but it's because they have an audience. They have a much larger audience than me. They make money grifting and making ads off of engagement by having the worst opinion you've ever seen through Twitter, through Facebook, through Instagram, through TikTok, through YouTube. They say the stupidest, most terrible, morally bankrupt things you've ever heard. They make money off of them. When the leftists were canceling everybody, when the leftists were canceling the careers of comedians, canceling the careers of actors, canceling small creators' YouTube channels, getting ads taken from them, demonetizing them, getting some people fired from their jobs, they decide, I'm going to follow the same principle that these scumbag leftists, quote unquote, use. I'm going to follow the same thing of guilt by association. So I've seen way too many people who are happy that these fires have happened, and they don't have any empathy. They don't feel bad at all. In their mind, I've heard people say this exact thing. Well, if you still live in California after what's transpired the past few years and decades, then you deserve what's happened to you. If you say that, you genuinely should go to the top of a building and reflect. You should genuinely go to the top of a skyscraper, look down at the street below, 20 stories below, and reflect. Reflect on why you're such a waste of space and oxygen. You know who else thought like this? You know who else thought, oh, well, you happen to be living in the same area of some poor, corrupt, scumbag politicians like Gavin Newsom, so therefore you deserve bad things to happen to you. You know who else thought like this? Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was upset with how much the United States was involved in politics in his country that he grew up from. So he planned and carried out a terrorist attack that was responsible for many Americans losing their lives. And what he explained in his stupid letters that a bunch of dumb Gen Z idiots were like, oh, this makes sense. This guy's this guy's pretty smart. I hate America too. Even though I'm rich and I live one of the best, highest qualities of life for no reason other than being born an American. Oh, this guy makes sense. Osama bin Laden assumed, and he said in his letters, the reason I'm doing this, the reason I'm going to kill Americans is because you're not innocent. You guys voted for this. You asked for this. Therefore, you're complicit in this. How does the family of 5 that currently has, the husband, the father's parents are living in the home too because they're getting old, but they want to help raise their grandkids. Why do they deserve to lose their home, lose their family pet, possibly lose family members, just because they happen to be living in California? It's sad that I have to explain this, but newsflash, not every Californian thinks the same way. Not every American thinks the same way. Why do I have to explain this? Because of dumbasses with millions of followers who make tens of thousands of dollars a month by spouting the same types of rhetoric that terrorists spout, the same rhetoric that Ukrainians are lying to themselves. When they kill an innocent Russian that got drafted, that has no choice to go fight in a war. I call this othering people. By othering these people in California who are the same species as you, because the off chance that they may have voted for Gavin Newsom. Also, newsflash, if you voted for Gavin Newsom, you still don't deserve to die. You still don't deserve to lose your home. You still don't deserve to lose your family pet. People do not deserve bad things to happen to them just because they think differently than you. I'm sorry. I know we're still primitive humans. I know it's a thing that's built into us. Is that guy part of my tribe? If not, let's throw spears at him. Let's hang him from his balls and roast him over a fire. Let's do unspeakable things to his wife, to his kids. But it's 2025. We're not early human beings anymore. Look at how much has changed. Look at how much has changed in the last 50 to 100 years in the way that human beings live. Quit using tribal thinking as an excuse. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to complain when leftists get you fired from your job. And newsflash, sorry, I keep saying newsflash. I sound like a millennial era sitcom, some piece of trash like Friends. But Mike Cernovich and Cat Turd and Wokeness, none of these people have ever had real jobs. They're grifters. That's why they do what they do. It's easier to take the worst, most morally bankrupt stance and make tens of thousands of dollars in engagement and ad revenue than it is to actually have a belief system. If they came out and went full, I'm 100% a communist, I believe in this, I believe in that, real communism has never been tried, I would at least respect them if they were consistent. But these people are scumbags. And it goes without saying, except it doesn't apparently, because I'm saying it right now. Nobody deserves bad things to happen to them simply for thinking a different way. Period. End of story. There's no room for argument here. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Xendependently Minded. For anybody who is not watching this on Spotify or YouTube, if you're listening to just the audio version, there's going to be a separate episode, either in Spotify or YouTube, that's just titled Justin Trudeau Lowlights Compilation. So if you were just listening to this episode in the car, you wanted to see that Lowlights compilation, there's a video version of it. It's a little better to watch than listen to because, little bit of visuals to go along with it, and there are a couple graphics on there that don't have any audio. Like towards the end, there's a graph that shows the change in the average cost of a home in Canada, with a highlight being when Trudeau took office in November of 2015. So there's going to be a separate little highlight compilation. You can watch that on YouTube. You can watch that on Spotify. And of course, this podcast episode will be available in audio and video form. So, that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Check out the merch shop. 100% of the proceeds get donated to the Child Mind Institute, a nonprofit organization aimed at helping families with children that suffer from mental illness. Thank you for the support. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for the feedback I've been receiving. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. As always, stay safe and stay away from those crazies out there. Thank you.